Hi, and welcome to my multicultural book review. So, the book that I chose for my book review is titled Thank You, Omu, and it's by Oj Mora, and it has won the Caldecott Honor Award and also the Coretta Scott Illustrator Award. And I chose the book to mainly be focused on the first grade level. And in summary, the book is mainly about it's a children's picture book, and it describes a woman who cooks a big pot of stew for her dinner, and the entire neighborhood smells the pot of stew, and one by one, characters start coming to her door to ask if they can have a bowl of soup. And in her generosity, she says yes and gives every person who comes to her door the food that they asked for. And by the time dinner time comes around, she realizes that there's actually none left for her to eat. And the book describes how before she was able to be saddened by not seeing any more soup in the bowl, there was a knock at the door, and in front of her was all the people that she had served throughout the day and fed. And from receiving her generosity, they were able to come to her door and bring her a bunch of food for her dinner so that she wouldn't be lacking after giving all the people and keeping them fed. And I really loved the concept of the book and the illustrations included in it. And I believe that it was a really good foundation, especially for first grade students, and the overall message of the book, since one thing that early elementary students struggle with, not specifically in the language arts classroom, but as an overall issue, is the aspect of sharing and having to incorporate that into lessons to teach students how to do that. And so I thought it was a really good opportunity to read the book and not only incorporate that in the language arts classroom, but also just a general rule of thumb of being able to be generous and how and what that looks like. And I thought it was a really good read as well, since it was really well illustrated and it gave students a visual idea of what culture might look like in a specific neighborhood, since the illustrations were very varied and a lot of the characters were all very different and none of them looked like one another. So the students would get the opportunity to maybe find people in the story who looked like them, of different races and ethnicities, and different characters that they could relate to throughout the story as well. And so I chose that book also because I feel like students could be connected to the book in that way, and they could not only incorporate the aspect of sharing in the language arts classroom, but also be able to connect with the actual characters and the actual settings. And if they couldn't, they could visualize their own neighborhood and why their neighborhood looks different than the one in the story, or if characters in the neighborhood look different than their own, what kind of characters would they see in their own neighborhood, or what kind of foods would they cook in order to share with others, and what would that look like, and would it be a soup or would it be something completely different that they make in their that their parents make in their kitchen. So I thought it was a really good opportunity for being able to visualize and see a bit of variety in their culture as well. And a couple of the teaching ideas I had for the story itself was the first one was the book could be a means of introducing students to different characters, so allowing students to identify characters, settings, and details within the book itself, mainly focusing on characters. And since there are so many different characters, the students could start understanding who and what can be a character in a book and how to identify the main character and what that looks like. And they can also start to recognize certain characters and connect that to their own personal lives and see maybe, like I said before, if the characters in the book don't necessarily look like people that they would see in their neighborhood, they could get the opportunity to create a story of their own, or just even start thinking about and writing down and creating a character that would be the main character of their story in their neighborhood. And so they can be prompted by questions like who else would be in their own neighborhood, and what kind of people would they see in their own neighborhood if they were in this particular book. And another lesson that I thought would be good to include this story. The language arts classroom was featuring a mini lesson on words that describe feelings and senses. So the book has a lot of particular words that describe the senses, especially when it comes to the food that the characters are smelling or visualizing what the neighborhood looks like. And so students can have a mini lesson on what kind of words would you use to describe the five senses, such as like words you would use to describe the smell of the food, and then they would get the opportunity to do that as well and choose what words they would describe. They would choose to describe the soup that they saw in the book, or what kind of words they would use to describe the neighborhood, or maybe what kind of words they would describe. They would choose to describe particular characters, such as a policewoman or the main character herself. So that is, in summary, my multicultural book review and the reasons why I chose to focus it on the book title Thank You, Omu by Illusion Mora.